much, and good evening, everyone. So, welcome to the March 13th, 2024 meeting of the Baltimore County Design Review Panel. This meeting is now called to order, and I am your chair, Joseph Usufero. We'll start with a roll call to account for the members of the panel who are present on this virtual meeting. So when you hear your name, please say aye. Mr. Can.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Sauce.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens. I think I heard Mr. Stevens had some technical issues and he would not be able to join. Mr. Kurjakar. Okay, don't hear Mr. Kurjakar. Mr. Walters.
Aye.
Excellent. And I'm going to circle back to Mr. Tarek Salah. I'd like to, Mr. Salah, welcome you to the panel. I know this is your first meeting, but we are so fortunate and glad that you're on the panel.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
And I think last but not least, we have our residential reviewer, Mr. Fran Anderson. Mr. Anderson, are you out there?
Yeah, I said aye. Sorry about that.
Hi, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so if Mr. Kurjakar or Mr. Stevens join, I'll go ahead and get them on the record. So what we're going to do is we're going to pivot from the published agenda slightly, and I'm going to go through the old meeting minutes, and then we're going to do a special presentation by the Department of Planning prior to reading the opening statement. So let's go ahead and look at the agenda, and I'm going to ask Marta, are there any changes to the tentative agenda as published on the screen?
No, there are no changes, Joe. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So panel members, there was an email on February 4th, 2024 that the panel members received draft minutes from the last meeting, which was December 13th, 2023. A question for the panel, has everybody had an opportunity to review the draft minutes through the email? I'll go ahead and take the silence as everybody has reviewed. I'll ask a question. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of the December 13th, 2023 DRP meeting? Hearing no comments from the panel, who would like to make a motion to accept the minutes as circulated?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as circulated.
Okay. Was that Mr. Walters that made that motion?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Walters. So there's a motion on the floor to accept the minutes as circulated. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Can, thank you very much for the second. All in favor, if you could come off of mute and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Great. I think I heard everybody. Any opposed to that motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned before, we're going to pivot slightly and allow Ms. Jennifer Nugent to conduct a special presentation by the Department of Planning. So Ms. Nugent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Usufero. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jennifer Nugent. I'm Chief of the Development Review Division for the Department of Planning, and I'm on here this evening giving a presentation and a special thank you to one of our recently retired members of the Design Review Panel, and that is Mr. Matt Renaud. And we do have an executive citation for you, Matt, for your many years of service on the panel. And so I'd like to read the citation. Baltimore County Executive Citation for Matt Renaud, in recognition and gratitude for exceptional dedication for the last 5 years to the Design Review Panel. Your commitment to excellence influenced and increased the quality of commercial and residential projects in downtown Towson and throughout Baltimore County. Your vision, entrepreneurial spirit, and advice significantly contributed towards a greater standard of life for thousands of residents. On behalf of all its residents of Baltimore County, we thank you for your commitment to this influential commission. Given in my hand and the Great Seal of Baltimore County this 12th day of December in the year 2023, John A. Olszewski Jr., County Executive. And as on a personal note, as myself, Matt, we, the planning department, really do thank you for all this service that you provided and your thoughtful commentary on all the projects that you were involved with. We will miss having you, and please continue to stay involved with Baltimore County. And sorry it took us a couple of months to get this formally done for you, but we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Thanks to all of you too. It's been a lot of fun.
That's great.
Yeah, and thank you, Matt, for your years of service and for stepping in and filling in for me on several occasions as the chair.
Yes.
Much appreciated. So thank
No
you.
worries. Good luck to all of you moving forward. Appreciated the time with all of you.
Yeah.
Thank
Take care. Have a good one, Matt. And
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you, Jennifer, for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jennifer. We'll see you soon.
You're welcome.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is read an opening statement for the design review panel. So if everybody could just go ahead and mute their computers, this will take me a couple minutes to get through, and then we'll jump into the second item on the agenda. This is an opening statement that I read monthly before these meetings. Title 4, Subtitle 2, Part 1, Sections 32.4.203 and 204 establish the Design Review Panel, and we use the acronym DRP. The DRP was established to encourage design excellence and shall act in a consulting and advisory capacity to the agencies involved in the process for reviewing development plans. The objectives for the DRP's assessment include spatial, visual, and functional relationship to the topographical characteristics, the natural and built features of the site, as well as the surrounding features of the site, visual and functional integration of streetscapes, pedestrian pathways, playgrounds, recreational amenities, and parks. Streets and sidewalks are laid out in a safe and convenient manner, and parking is a positive design element. Building, parking garages, and other structures are spatially and visually integrated and suitable to their surroundings in proportion, massing, and type of materials and colors, signage and other elements of urban design. And plant materials are selected and cited to define the site, provide a theme, frame a view, enhance architecture and street character, improve microclimate, provide transition between dissimilar uses, screen objectionable views and uses, and reduce noise levels and glare. In carrying out its duties, the DRP utilizes the guidelines, plans, and architectural principles in the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies and/or Master Plan, as well as other guidelines and regulations adopted into law. Certain areas of the county were designated by the County Council to require review by the DRP. The panel will provide a technical review of the proposed project. Issues relative to zoning, setback relief, environmental and stormwater management, and traffic regulations do not fall under the purview of the DRP and are regulated through the appropriate agencies responsible for those aspects of the development plan review process. The panel consists of 9 members. All are professionals with practical knowledge in the matters of design. For purposes of making recommendations on a particular project, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. The attendance and comments of each member shall be recorded in the minutes, which shall be an open record and available, along with all documents submitted to the panel for inspection and copying by the public. There will be an opportunity for the community to offer comments and suggestions at the conclusion of the applicant's presentation. These comments will also be included in the written record of the meeting. When a speaker is called up to speak, please keep your comments focused on design perspectives within your allotted 2 minutes of time. And if you're speaking on behalf of a community group, you will get 5 minutes. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Department of Planning will sum up the recommendations of the panel before a motion for a vote is suggested. Recent legislation has changed the panel's recommendations to be advisory on the hearing officer and the various county agencies unless the hearing officer or agencies find the panel's actions constitute an abuse of its discretion or are unsupported by the documentation and evidence presented. Disposition of the plan will be determined as either approved with conditions, or additional review with a second meeting being required. So that's the opening statement. Thank you very much for listening. And what we will do now is proceed to agenda item number 2, which is 1400 LaBelle Avenue in the RRL RAIA residential review area. So if the presenter would please introduce themselves, and the floor will be yours. When you need the slides to be advanced, please ask Marta to advance the slide. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Benhoff with Benhoff Builders. You guys probably know my father, Mel. He's been building homes in the area for about 40 years. I've been working with him for about 15. Together we sort of make up the ownership of Benhoff Builders. And I appreciate you guys hearing my presentation tonight, and I look forward to any comments you may have. So with that, I guess we'll start to make our way through the first. I've got 2 properties tonight. This is the first one, 1400 LaBelle Avenue. Project summary. Benhoff Builders intends to build a 4-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom, roughly 4,393 square foot living area single-family home on the lot known as 1400 LaBelle Avenue, 0.308 acres in Ruxton Heights. The architecture of the home, we've collaborated with the Radcliffe architects on this project. The landscaping and natural screening will allow this home to be complementary to the neighboring architecture and we hope maintain the high standards and integrity of the neighborhood. The house will be scaled properly for the lot size so as to look natural in relation to its surroundings and not overwhelm the lot. It has been engineered to fit comfortably within the building envelope, requiring no special zoning exceptions or variances. Next slide. As part of this process, I have the site context plan here. It kind of just shows you guys where the lot is located on the corner of Locust and LaBelle Avenues. I assume most people sort of know the general location of this. Next slide. This is just sort of another view of the same existing conditions plan on the site, showing the grading and the existing vegetation. Also, we'll get into the pictures you see around this are quite small, but the next several slides will show them in more detail. So here's a panoramic shot of the corner of Locust Avenue and LaBelle Avenue. Next slide. Here we're looking east along LaBelle Avenue and looking west along LaBelle Avenue. Next slide. The adjacent house, 1404 LaBelle Avenue, that's a house we built, I'm not sure how long ago, probably 15 years ago at least. And the house across the street, 1401 LaBelle Avenue. Next slide. LaBelle Avenue streetscape and looking north along Locust Avenue. Next slide. View along west property line. That house you see in the background, that actually is my father Mel's house. And there's also a view of the rear property line there. You can kind of see how it relates to the house in the picture. Next slide. This shows some of the existing trees and vegetation. You've got the view of an existing oak tree on Locust, a couple of other trees as well on the property. Next slide. So here, this is a rendering of the home that Radcliffe Architects put together for us. It's sort of a perspective view of the house. I'll kind of run through some of the colors and materials we're planning to use for this project. Interestingly enough, the stone you see there was actually salvaged from the original house that sat on 1401 Berwick. It was the old original foundation stone, so we think that's kind of cool. It's a neat sort of bluish grayish stone, and you'll see the exact same stone on the house behind it on Berwick, my father's house. So we're planning on using that same stone. I'll kind of just go around clockwise, starting with the windows. We use Anderson 400 series windows, SDL or TDL. So it's a quality, nice looking window. We find that the Anderson product is a great bang for the buck. I mean, to me, it looks and functions as well as a Marvin, but has a good price point to it. And they're very serviceable. 1 1/8 inch mullions to give it a nice custom look. And we're going to do that in sort of the Anderson sandstone color, which is represented pretty well in this picture. That's going to be the color on the trim as well as we make our way through this. The roof, we're planning a Certainty Landmark Pro pewterwood architectural shingle. We find this to be a really nice looking shingle. You can see a lot of it. The neighborhood we just finished building in Lutherville called Hampton Park, we use this product on most of the homes, varying colors, but the same basic product. It sort of mimics a natural shake sort of look, which we like. All of our trim is a synthetic product, either an AZEK or Boral type trim board, and those are all painted. They'll be painted, like I said, the sandstone to match the Anderson windows. We're planning on using a natural cedar shake siding on this house. Again, you can see that replicated from the house that sits behind it at 1401 Berwick. We typically do this on many of our homes. The flatter roof sections for front porches and rear porches, we often use a copper standing seam roof. It just holds up better than a shingled roof for a flatter surface. We also think it's just a really nice, sharp look. You'll see this on a number of our homes. We'll do that here again. We're planning on the exterior lighting being copper lanterns, probably from Visual Comfort, but it's similar to a Bavolo style copper lantern. It's just a look we found is just a nice classic look for exterior lighting. The door will be a custom entryway, a mahogany or a Ipe, some nice, most likely a mahogany stained doorway, which we found is a pretty sharp look. And on the stone, we'll cap it off at the first floor using a bluestone masonry stone cap. So that's kind of the overall look of the perspective look of the architecture and a lot of the colors and materials we're planning on using. This might be I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of that, but I'm happy to answer anything or address anything.
Yeah, Mr. Benhoff, if you could just wrap up the presentation.
Okay.
And what we'll do is we'll open it up for comments and questions.
Okay, gotcha.
Great, thank you.
Yep, of course, thank you. So here's so now we're getting into sort of the plans instead of the the rendering, which we saw, which is a little trickier to look at. It's basically the same labels all the way around that you just saw, so I won't spend time going through all that. You saw the height and width labels there. Here's the rear elevation of the home. The right side elevation, this home will have a 2-car garage. Again, trying to keep the home sized properly for the smaller lot so as not to overwhelm the lot. Just gives you a nice view of that side view. I've also got an example of sort of this sandstone colored, nice looking garage door that we would plan to use here as well. And again, the copper lanterns. That's the right side elevation. You can go to the next slide. Left side elevation. I realize these are a little tricky to look at, but you know, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to, at the end, I'm happy to address them. I know you guys aren't as concerned with the interior, but just here's the first floor plan. We're planning on building this with a main floor, a first floor primary suite. That's become a pretty big selling point in the industry. A lot of customers are looking for that. Otherwise, a fairly open floor plan. So 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 with its own full bath, and then 2 sort of share a shower, but have their own vanities. So it's sort of a Jack and Jill type situation. And we feel that this is again, being in this business, we are trying to build homes that, you know, not only look beautiful within the community, but also kind of have the living space that's laid out in a way that, you know, what people are looking for these days. And we find that various versions of this general plan work pretty well. Next slide. We've put together a landscape and lighting plan. You'll see here, it's probably a little tough to see, but we had a friend of mine, Lloyd Martin, put this together for me. And basically we do kind of a similar landscape package on a lot of our projects. You know, we try to do enough screening. You can see around the sides and the rear. We've got some screening trees, evergreen trees, so they should screen more or less year round. On the left side of the house, you'll see some screening around the air conditioning compressors and a mix of, you know, a nice front planting bed with a mix of sort of evergreen and perennial type plantings. You'll see we have a couple of trees up near the front just to give the house a little bit of separation from the street. I wouldn't call it screening, but those are nice shade trees and just kind of helps to define the lot a little bit. On the right side, flanking the driveway, we've got some what do we have there? Some ornamental trees that'll just help create a nice entryway onto Locust Avenue there. Again, you know, all the plants are sort of labeled. This is the general idea of sort of what we're looking to do. You can see in the front of the house, we have a walkway coming from the driveway, which obviously is nice. And then we also have sort of a welcoming walkway out to the front of the house, out to LaBelle. Again, just it's a nice neighborhood feeling addition. And that's the landscape plan. Next slide. And so this is just the site plan. This is, I know Marta has an updated version of these slides. And so if somebody wants to dig into maybe Marta can run to that, because unfortunately, the one I submitted didn't have some of the detail on it that I, you know, was able to get after the fact. So, all right. So here we have That's a cross section that kind of shows the house and the grading a little bit as well. Mart, I'm not sure if you passed that, if I rearrange the slides, if you pass that, there's the, here's the site plan that shows the grading on the lot. You can see there's a couple of swales in the rear of the home to try to bring that water around and sheet off to the roadways. Again, pretty standard situation there. Next slide. Again, that's the cross section, kind of shows obviously the site, the grade rises as it goes back slightly. You can see that here in the cross section. Next slide, sorry. Kind of already touched on the landscape and lighting plan. And there's a few more pictures of the rendering, and that's sort of a 30,000-foot overview of the project we're looking to build. We feel like it's a nice traditional home. We think it'll fit in very well with the neighborhood, and we're excited about building it. So I'm happy to hear any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Benhoff. Nice presentation. And what we'll do now is let me check with Marta and Brett and see if there are any speakers that have signed up to speak on behalf of the project from the community. Brett, Marta?
I don't have anyone on my end, Brett.
Yeah, there are community attendees in the chat, but no one has signed up to speak.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Since there are no community members that have signed up to speak, the official public comment period for this agenda item has now been closed. What we will do now is go around the panel, and I will call on the panel members, and when it's your turn, you can go ahead and unmute. If you are able, please turn your camera on. I think it humanizes this meeting as much as possible, and make any comments that you have. So, as we typically do with these residential projects, I'd like to start with Mr. Anderson for any comments or questions that he may have.
Thanks, Joe. And I apologize if anybody hears any noise in the background. The cleaning crew is vacuuming outside of my office, so try to keep it down if I can. Mr. Benhoff, look, I think the house is inherently, very attractive house. Like the design is nice. For me, it's a question of its suitability for the neighborhood, the lot, as you know. I have a couple of things I want to talk about. The one question I have for you is, you don't have a photograph of what would be your father's house from the rear of the proposed house, right? Do you?
Not more than that. One you kind of saw a slight bit of in
Right.
that,
Right.
in that one. I'm not sure I have it right. I could maybe dig one up on my computer, but I hate to spend a whole lot of.
Yeah, no, I get it. What I'm really just trying to establish is obviously the proximity of the house, your father's house, to the property line, and this one to the property line. They're very close, right? It looks like the corner of your father's house is probably only 15 or 20 feet from the property line. Where I'm really going is the view between the two homes. I don't know what it'll look like from the back of this one and vice versa. And while I know your father's probably not worried about it in this particular case, thinking sort of beyond that. There are others on this panel from a landscape perspective probably are better at understanding the screening options there. So maybe I'll fill that out as a comment for those other folks to consider. But the screening is a concern at the back given that proximity. But I do appreciate how you've tried to follow the property line and sort of mimic that property line with the siting of the house and the design of the house. So I'll kind of just put that out there as a concern. There's not a whole lot of space back there, right? If you look at the house there. So particular attention to the selection of screening there. And like I said, I'll leave that to others to maybe comment on.
Okay.
What I did want to do perhaps more importantly, I did receive a little bit of communication from at least one neighbor, and I think she brings up some good points that I'd like to make, but I'll read her letter to the community association members because I think she does a good job of voicing a couple of concerns. And this is from a neighbor who lives at 1407, so down the street at 1407 LaBelle Little.
Okay.
They raise a concern about the architecture being complementary to the neighboring architecture, and that the only structures, as she says, that the new home would resemble are the two homes built by the Benhoffs that flank the lot. So they're concerned about the architecture, and I'll get into that in a second. Her other comment is a concern over the size of the house at 4,300 plus square feet, on a 0.30 acre lot. She actually didn't feel that the home it was properly sized for the lot. It is larger than the neighboring house that you built, which is on a larger lot, I guess, or a similarly sized lot. And she felt the size of the house was something to be concerned about. And to be fair, your lot coverage on the house is pretty significant, right? There isn't a whole lot of space left. With regard to the architecture, the one thing that I am struck by, and I'd like to get your feedback on this, is you've chosen the cedar shake and the stone. Can you just give me some, I know you talk about the reclaimed stone from the other property on Berwick. Can you talk about the cedar shake? Because as I look around the neighborhood there, particularly on LaBelle and the houses that are across the street, and you only have the one yellow house on there.
Right.
Everything on that side of the street is pretty much clapboard, right? And it is roof to foundation. There's not even much brick. There's no stone that I can see. And even the house that you built next door is brick and clapboard rather than cedar. So can you kind of just tell me how you decided on the cedar shake? Because I went all around the neighborhood, and the only place that exists is on your father's house.
Well, I guess we see it as just a real sort of classic look. I mean, I'm not sure. You're right. I'd have to drive around. I would think there's probably somewhere in the Ruxton like greater area, more cedar shake homes. I could be wrong. I just don't know offhand. There's not.
Let's agree that, yeah, you're right. If you drove around Ruxton, there's so many different styles of houses you could find. I'm just talking specifically within the view shed of this area, in particular Ruxton Heights area, and on LaBelle specifically. And if you just sort of, even if you brought up a Google map of LaBelle, you'd see one after the other, clapboard houses top to bottom with actually no masonry whatsoever, practically.
Right. I mean, I guess what I would say, I mean, speaking in more general terms, I mean, there's very few neighborhoods I could drive around that have more varied architectural styles than Ruxton Heights. I mean, there's everything from Victorians that are painted in funny styles, they're different from their surrounding homes, to my father's home behind it is more of a craftsman style home, as is the old school from across the street. I would say the one across the street is maybe more of a traditional or colonial style with just the yellow one across the street is kind of, like I said, maybe colonial. I mean, I know there's colonial. So I feel like Ruxton has a very, wide range of architectures. And as long as, in my view, as long as you're not going wildly outside that with something ultra contemporary, to me it fits. And like you mentioned, we are actually using some of the products off of 100-year-old home that existed on the property. And the shake in general, it's just I mean, the way I see it is when you start to use natural materials like shake and stone, to me, that harkens back to like old world craftsmanship and old world homes. And that's what Ruxton is filled with. So I think in that sense, it's very fitting. And it makes it look like it's an old home. It doesn't have, vinyl or aluminum or, anything that's like, it's very classic and very like an old home. So I mean, the cedar was just kind of a design choice. I actually think, a lot of people see that again as maybe even preferable to painted. It's a more expensive option for sure, but it's to me a more natural, more historic looking kind of. I mean, maybe not historic to Ruxton, but just in general, an older sort of look to it. So I
Like
guess
you
that's
said,
my.
yeah, like I said, I mean, there are elements that intrinsically are really attractive, right? That goes without saying, and that's not my critique of it. And
Right.
as you point out, Ruxton is an eclectic place with a lot of different styles available. So, which is why when I look at this, I look very much at the view shed from this house and from other houses to this house, right? And if you
Mhm.
look at LaBelle, which is the majority of the view shed here because of this, if you think about Berwick, you can't even see Berwick from most of the house because of the trees and your father's house. It is clapboard siding, and I'll tell you, even on your drawings, which I know maybe it's a limitation of the drawing software you're using, you even show what appears to be clapboard siding rather than cedar shake siding drawings. It looks better to me. Um, and the other comment that I'll make, and maybe some of this is about the scale and what is making me think this is going to even look bigger than it does, is you're bringing the stone all the way up to the second floor, through a much considerably larger part of the house than even kind of what you might have done on the other house. Would you give any consideration potentially? Well, and this goes back to the siding question of bringing some of that stone as you have done at the entrance down more to just maybe more like above the foundation level, or you kind of start sort of set on having it all the way to the second floor the whole way around, because if you go to the left elevation as well, which is a concern. You've got the stone on the left elevation. I don't know if Marta, you can go down to a left elevation. That's the right, which is broken up pretty nicely. Oh, I see. On this version, you have the cedar on there. On my version, you have the siding.
Yeah.
You obviously changed it. I'm just going to tell you, I like the siding version better. But on this side, you can see you bring the stone all the way around. There are no windows; it's not broken up, and then you drop it. When you hit the window section, you got a little bit of that, sort of water table, cap at the lower point. I mean, I think that also makes the massing of this thing appear bigger because of the stone. And again, none of the houses around there on LaBelle really have any masonry whatsoever. And so bringing it up to the second floor is a dramatic departure from what's there. They may have a few stack stone retaining walls or stack stone, walls in the yards, but as you look around, there isn't too much in the way of masonry. So
Right.
would you consider the opportunity to drop some of that stone?
I think we would consider dropping it down to maybe the windowsill height, possibly. I mean, if that up to the bottom of the first floor sill. I mean,
Trying to
that,
save you some money. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, no, I mean, it would. And truth be told, I'll be real honest with you. Mel's always kind of in his mind been sort of building this house for himself. And he's even mentioned that a couple of times. I don't know if I want to take that stone up that high. I might keep that down. So he's sort of mentioned the same thing. I mean, this is what Radcliffe sort of put together for us. I think it looks okay, but I do understand your point. And I think it's a valid one. And you're right, it is more expensive to do that. So I do think lowering that stone is something we would consider. If that, especially if that helped, people's perception of the project and
Yeah.
possibly fit in a little better with the surrounding.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for the other members of the panel who may not have driven the bell. You know, maybe I'm working from a different set of certain, understanding of the neighborhood than they are. But I think it's a great option. I'd like to hear what other people have to think about it. But those are really, again, attractive house. My main concern is trying to get it to, because of its size, and I'm not asking you to reduce the scale of it, because you do a nice job keeping it under roof. The second floor is under roof, trying to minimize the square footage, right? I think you do a nice job with that. What I'm trying to do is through the materials, maybe have it fit in a little bit better and sort of minimize the impact of the scale of it, compared to the other homes, which are both smaller and also, if you look at the grades, sort of, this is kind of a high point of the street, right? It sits prominent on the top of the street. But those are my comments. I'll let everybody else kind of chime in. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So what we'll do is we'll go down the other panel members. So let's start with Mr. Can, and if the folks could think about Mr. Anderson's comments specifically related to the stone and comment on that as well. Mr. Can.
Thank you. Can we see the rear elevation one more time?
I think you just went by it.
That's fine. So one of my concerns is that the geometry of the angled portion of that roof, that I would be concerned about exactly how that all ties together. The house is pretty rectangular with the exception of that living room space. And I would study that a little bit harder to see if it can be simplified more. I think I would agree with the discussion of the stone height. I think even when you see this elevation with the stone at the windowsill, it really seems to sit down more in terms of its mass for the site. So I think I would encourage you to look at that. And then again, I think that I would at least study the issue of the clapboard versus the cedar shake, particularly if there's going to be more surface of the building that is not stone. I think, but otherwise, I think the only concern I have is to be sure that the screening around the site and the protection of the major tree is resolved. I don't think, it's as close to the neighbor on the left as it is to the neighbor on the north. So I think, the spacing of the buildings is something that while it's a big house for the site, it's, I think it can be resolved with the screening and a little simplification of the stonework. And that's it.
I think those are all good comments. Just to answer one of your questions, the original plan actually had that living room section not on that angle. That's something we did because if you look at the funny jog in the back line of that lot, actually, Marta, that landscape plan showed it. Well, either's fine.
I saw that.
So that was kind of a way we worked with the funny layout of the back line of the property. I agree with you. In a perfect world, I'd rather that not be on an angle, but I think it was kind of a compromise we used to make it work with the lot. So that's why that decision was made.
I understand that. I'm mostly concerned with sort of how it all goes together and, it looks resolved and intentional because it's sort of, it's a challenge because of all the different roof lines that come together at that point.
Marta, could you find that second floor plan? Because that kind of shows the downward shot of there you go.
Right.
So, I mean, that gives you a little idea of kind of how it all pieces together back there. Just for what it's worth.
Understood.
But thank you for your comments. I mostly agree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Can. Let's go to Mr. Sala. Um, if you could come off of mute, and it's your turn.
First of all, thank you. I think, well, I appreciated your thoughtfulness in terms of the selection of the exterior material. I think there's obviously some positives about using the reclaimed stone. I appreciated that a lot. I think in terms of the elevation of it, um, I think it actually would look much better for this house to drop it down if you could. I agree with that comment. The siding, on the other hand, obviously this is going to weather. So with time, it's going to change color a little bit. And I think it really looks really nice right now in terms of the other color in the stone. But maybe when it weathers in the future, I don't know if you'll be forced to paint it or something to maintain that aesthetic. And I think kind of defeats the purpose of using a natural material that weathers. But I think the colors might become maybe too bland overall with time. So maybe just think about that as a potential future maintenance issue that you might have to deal with, or the homeowner has to deal with. I'd like to maybe go to the site plan. I'd have a question on the driveway entry. There's no sidewalks on that street, and anytime I see an entry close to an intersection, I'd just like to, I guess, think about that a little bit and try to push that entry into the driveway as far as you can from the from the from the corner of the street. So I'm not sure what that dimension it is right now. But if there's a potential for you to push it north on the plan, I think that would be a nice thing just for safety reasons away from that corner.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Um,
hear what you're saying. We could look into adjusting that a little bit. I mean, with that side of the street, I think was slightly preferable to coming out to LaBelle because I think there's more entryways on the other side of LaBelle. I'd have to look, but
I would just recommend you
you're
take a look at it. If you're
okay.
able to push it north on the plan, I think that would be a better solution.
Okay.
Um, I do, in terms of the scale of the house, I mean, I sort of know what the architect was trying to do there. I think it's really trying to combine a couple of different styles together. Maybe that cottage style, warm, fuzzy looking with the wood siding. I kind of understand that. Um, I did receive the material. I was having problems accessing the shared site, so I did receive the material yesterday. So I didn't really get a ton of time to review and maybe even visit the neighborhood. But I kind of trust my colleagues in terms of the aesthetic and tying it to neighboring houses. I would love to see the clapboard siding versus as an option. I still, even with the second house, I think the shingle just, it kind of, to me, looks a little bit out of place. But otherwise, I think the proportion and scale of the house is broken down pretty well on the front side of the building. Uh, and on the back, yeah, it's a little bit busy, but I understand sort of what you're trying to do in terms of the setbacks and the property line and try to maximize that footprint. It seems like it's a bigger house, but I think on the front side, you guys did a good job in terms of breaking the scale of the mass very, very well. But otherwise, good job. And thank you for presenting it.
Thank you for your comments. You know, and in talking it over with Mel, I know one of the things we're going to really try to do is hold the house low. We'll probably have to take dirt off the site to do that. So it's not, you can see the house next to it sticks up kind of high. This one's not going to be like that. This is going to be nestled down into that bank a little bit more. And we also chose the design of kind of story and a half, where your second story is your roof story, to kind of keep that scale down a little bit too. But I do understand the comments and concerns, and thank you for your insight.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sala. Let's go to Mr. Sharma.
I think I don't have any additional comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. How about Ms. Sauce? Ms. Sauce, you may be muted. We can't hear you. Um,
Sorry about
yeah,
that. I thought you
yeah,
were.
we can hear you now. Great.
Okay. Um, Thank you for the presentation. Very thoughtful and thorough. I agree with my fellow panelists' comments and on the architecture and the layout. I'll dig into the landscape. I feel like that was a softball that was slow pitch softball that was pitched to me. I'm a little bit concerned with the lack of native plant material on the site. There's a lot of non-native, probably like 90%. And the screening in the back, I would like to see more diversity. I know you're going for the evergreen screening, but you're specking them all at about 7 to 8 feet tall. And I was wondering if you had given thought to any canopy trees or something. The arborvitae are fast growing and screener's best friend. But they are short-lived by about 25 years, and creating some diversity in plant material back there, giving different heights, introducing some shade trees with the roof line, it just giving varied heights of screening, I think would be more beneficial for that back area. And then again, through the front, there's a lot of color, a lot of cool plant material going in there. Love the sage. But again, the lack of native plant material, is there going to be irrigation to get these established, either temporary or permanent? Or can more natives be introduced so that this landscape really takes off and has all season interest and will stand the test of time?
Those are good comments. I could certainly talk to Lloyd about trying to work in some more of the natives that you speak of. I'll admit landscaping probably isn't quite as strong of my strong suit as much as sort of architecture, but I hear what you're saying, and they sound like good suggestions for that back line. I mean, I know for screening, a lot of times we like to use obviously the evergreens because they grow quick, they do screen well, and they screen real year round. So even though sometimes it's maybe not the perfect planting on its own, it does serve that purpose well. But that I think it's a good suggestion to maybe work in some of the native trees that you spoke about.
Yeah, you just have to think about like somebody standing in on a balcony or on their second story window looking out, do they really want to be staring into their neighbor's window and be face to face
Right.
with them if the house is that close, which, it looks like it is. So just, yeah, I'd appreciate giving some thought to that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ms. Sauce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Mr. Walters.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the foresightedness of the architecture and the building materials. I think one of the earlier comments about the geometry in the back is really as much about the size of the building on the lot, where you pretty much maximize the buildable area, and then the funky building property line led you to this. I think in the plan it does feel too big, but I do appreciate the 1.5 story nature feel of the elevations and the massing. I think you do. The building does a nice job of setting the scale down, which I think makes it appropriate for this neighborhood and this lot. And I wanted just a second, I think bringing the stone down to the water table portion or the sill of the front first floor windows will only help you in that regard.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so I think that wraps up all my fellow panel members' comments. I think what I did have a question comment on
Hey, Joe. Sorry to interrupt, but Ohm has logged in. He's on.
Oh, okay. Mr. Kurjakar, good evening.
Good evening. Sorry, I was 10 minutes late because of the link wasn't working, but I've been listening to the whole thing. So
Okay, great. Do
um,
you have any comments related to this project?
I do. I actually have three comments. I do agree with all the architectural comments that were shared, and I appreciate it. I do want to applaud you for a very clear presentation. I think it was very easy to understand. I appreciate the use of the reclaimed stone, but I do share the same concerns as other panelists. Um, in terms of the planting, as Ms. Ross said, that natives should be considered. In addition, I think that you may want to look at all your plant material and think about deer resistance. I live around here, so there's a lot of deer in this area, so that could be a problem. And then the back corner of the site, it slopes towards the house. I feel that I did not put a scale, but I feel like that's a 3:1 slope coming towards the house, towards the patio from that triangular sort of corner of the lot.
Right.
I feel like you might have some erosion issues, so you may want to consider either some short terracing or terracing and planting that corner a little more.
Right.
And then I do agree with the driveway comment by Mr. Saleh. I also feel that the the plant material at that driveway, instead of creating two tree and small planting areas, what if
Right.
it was a much more continuous plant bed on either sides, which if you drive around the neighborhood, there are properties which have a very continuous edge planting condition, so it might help fit into the neighborhood a little better.
Okay.
Uh, and then my last two comments are for the front of the house. I think you may want to consider something taller in terms of the plant material as opposed to just short, perennials. I think a layering of some taller semi-evergreens, that's due south, so you might benefit from some sun. So there is some more uh, opportunity to create something that's simpler, a little taller, that might help with the proportions of the stone on the building. And then the last but not last one really is the corner planting, the tree and the viburnums. I feel like the cars are all turning at that corner, so you may want to consider sort of a little bit of layering of that planting from short to tall as you go towards the house, in order to allow for better visibility so that people can see while turning.
That would be those shade trees you're referring to?
Yeah,
Sort of push them back a little maybe, or?
I think so. I think, or maybe there's not the two shade trees in the front,
Right.
but right at the corner you have I think it's
I
5
think that,
viburnums and
okay.
then a shade tree. I think that whole plant mass could be simplified and sort of step back, so it will help. Uh,
I agree. I think if you're referring to the one I think you are, that might be an existing tree.
Oh, sorry, that's an existing tree, but I think I'm talking about the
Right.
viburnums in
Yep.
front of that you were planting.
You're right.
That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
comments.
Sure, thank you.
So I did have one comment as it relates to the grading, but Mr. Benhoff submitted a revised grading plan, and through the presentation that answered my questions.
Okay.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do now is just summarize some of the main comments that I've heard, and we as a group will need to make a motion on the project. So, I've heard a lot of comments as it relates to the landscape, right, and the design as it relates to native species and kind of moving around some and adding some some scale to the landscape. So that's really a big one that I heard. Number two, I think it's a consistent comment across the panel, which is taking the proposed stone and lowering that stone to the, we'll call it the water table.
Right.
And number three, really the overall scale of the house as it relates to the lot, and I don't know if we can do anything about that. So I'd ask my fellow panel members to, if somebody could think about and make a motion, and I'll just remind everyone that there are three options that are out there. We can approve the project as it is. We can approve the project with conditions, meaning the conditions would have to be addressed by the applicant, through the administrative staff review, typically in the Department of Planning, and that would not require another public meeting. Or the third option would be additional review with a second public meeting being required with the various conditions. So what I'd like to do is toss this back to my fellow panel members and see if somebody would like to make a motion, and please, expand on your comments because the conditions will be part of the public record.
Joe, this is Fran. I'd be willing to give it a shot. I think I have a reasonable list here.
Sure, great.
So I would move that the project be approved with the following conditions to be reviewed by staff. As relates to the site and the landscaping, to review the landscaping plan for the introduction of more native species, to look at the diversity of the planting, particularly at the screening in the rear for height purposes, and to look at the location and the landscaping around the driveway for safety and visibility. In addition to that, architecturally, to look at lowering the stone to what we're calling water table height. Let's see if I missed anything else. Perhaps an examination of clapboard siding versus cedar, but I don't think that is I'm not sure if that should be a condition we keep in this other than an examination, because I don't think we would have a problem with it. I didn't hear a consensus that it should be clapboard versus cedar shake.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a succinct motion. I'm going to ask the Department of Planning, Brett, Marta, Jennifer, is that a clear enough motion, I think, as it relates to landscape and the stone?
Yes, it is clear, Brett.
Yes, it's clear. I got everything. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, there is a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Kerchikar? Thank you very much. All right, there's a second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed for the record?
I am opposed. This is Donald.
Okay. And I am also in favor of the motion. So we have more ayes than nays, so the motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll then proceed forward to the third item on the agenda, and I think Mr. Benhoff, you have this one too, which is 1314 Walnut Hill Lane, in that same RRL RAIA residential review area. So if you could, know that the panel members got this presentation. So before we've studied that presentation in depth. So to the extent you can, please, expeditiously move through the presentation.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, 1314 Walnut Hill Lane. The picture you're seeing is a close representation, but it's not exact. This is a house we've built in sort of slightly differing forms several times. But again, it's a size and it's a layout that works well with certain size lots. It's also been appealing to buyers, and we think it's a nice looking home. So next slide, please. Van Hoff Builders intends to build a 4-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom, roughly 377.75 square foot living area, single family home on the lot known as 1314 Walnut Hill Lane, 0.863 acres in Ruxton. Not sure if you'd call this Ruxton Heights, but Ruxton Heights off of Walnut Hill. The architecture of the home, landscaping, and natural screening will allow this home to be complementary to the neighboring architecture and maintain the high standards and integrity of the neighborhood. This house will be scaled properly for the lot size so as to look natural in relation to its surroundings and not overwhelm the lot. Again, it's been engineered to fit comfortably within the building envelope, requiring no special zoning exceptions or variances. Next slide. These are just kind of showing you guys where this property is. There's a large estate home known as 1400 Walnut Hill Lane, and there are 3 lots that have been subdivided off of that. You can see the kind of small green dot, that's lot 1 basically. When we get to the next slide, I think I've got it, where you'll see the lots a little more clearly. There it is. So you can sort of see the 3 lots there. This is lot 1 we're talking about, and it's, like I said, slightly less than an acre in size. Next slide. This is just the existing conditions of the site at the moment. Next slide. Some of the site pictures. Basically, these are all just from Walnut Hill, sort of looking up at the site at varying angles. The first one sort of looking to the left where you see 1400 Walnut Hill, the estate home. Actually, the top 2 are sort of facing that way, and then the bottom pictures are sort of the camera panning to the right a little bit. So it's hard to see a lot there because of the existing trees, but that's the site. Next slide, please. Looking south along Walnut Hill Lane and looking north along Walnut Hill Lane. Next slide, please. The adjacent home I've mentioned, 1400 Walnut Hill Lane, and across the street I have 1323 Walnut Hill Lane. Next slide, please. Nearby home across the street, 1401 Walnut Hill Lane, I'm sorry, and a nearby home at 1317 Walnut Hill Lane down the street a little bit further. Next slide, please. This particular lot sits pretty much across from Crossmore Lane, so that's what you're looking at there. Next slide, please. View along the rear property line south, view along the rear property line north. As you can see, there's a lot of land behind these lots. A lot of it is in a environmental or a forest conservation easement, so that'll be protected. That's another rear property line shot. And so here's my slide talking about the various sort of colors and materials. I'll try to go through these sort of quick. Like the first picture you saw, and the reason I used it is because we used a lighter colored stone on the house, which we thought was very appealing. Again, we're going to use the Anderson 400 series windows, a Timberlane Endurian style shutter. All of our shutters on our homes are working. A lot of people don't actually close them, but we do put them on actual hardware and use real shutters, which I feel like gives a nice classic and old world sort of look. We like that Landmark Pro pewterwood shingle. So I've got that here again. Again, AZAC and Boral trim boards. This time our trim colors and our window colors will be in what's known as Anderson white, which is a slight off-white. It's got a slight creaminess to it. It's not just stark white, but it's we find it to be a very nice, appealing trim color. This house, we are planning again the shakes, but this would be a hardy shingle style painted shake in a color known as cobblestone, sort of a light gray color that we feel like works well with the stone. Again, the copper lanterns, the stained mahogany entryway. These are just features we put on a lot of our homes. You can't really see it, and I didn't label it there, but that front porch roof will have the copper on it, the standing seam copper, and there will be some brick accents for the, over the top of the windows. Again, similar to the house shown in the first slide. Next slide, please. Here's your front elevation, height and width, 33.1 and 86.6 wide. Again, it fits well on this lot, which is part of the reason we chose this plan. Next slide, please. The rear elevation. Next slide. Right side elevation. Next slide. And the left side elevation, we are choosing to do a 3-car garage here because it's more of what our customers are looking for, and we feel like this lot can adequately accommodate it. So we've kind of chosen to bump that up a little bit. Again, there's carriage house style doors. These will be in white, again, to match the trim, and the copper lanterns for the exterior lighting. And next slide. Similar layout, first floor primary suite, open dining, living, or dining, kitchen, family room area, a formal study in the front, foyer, and the 3-car garage. Obviously a mud room near the entryway on the garage side, and a small porch in the back as well. That'll be an open porch. The second floor will be somewhat compact with 3 additional bedrooms, a Jack and Jill style bathroom, and one will have an ensuite bathroom. Next slide, please. Again, Lloyd worked with me on this landscape plan, and I'm sure there'll probably be similar comments, which I'm again open to. Similar screening. There's really nothing behind this house. We've got some screening on the driveway side to the left, and really there's nothing directly to the left. 1400 Walnut Hill Lane sits back quite a bit, but we'll put some screening there. Obviously some on the right side, as we will be building houses on the next 2 lots along the way there. Similar plantings in the front and walkways. And then similar shade trees in the front, again, just to give a little bit of separation between that road and the house. I do want to point out that this house will sit back quite a bit. We've pushed the house basically as far back on this lot as possible to really set it off the street and not crowd out the neighbor across the street, and just not feel like it's right up on the road. We're aware that it's a very narrow, challenging road. And here is the proposed site plan. Kind of gives you distances between, we've got pretty good distances all around between the road, between the adjacent homes. We feel like this fits on this lot pretty well. We do have to take up a lot of the surface area of the lot, not the surface area, but the area of the lot with a septic reserve area and dry wells to manage the stormwater management. But still the house fits nicely. Next slide, please.
This is the last slide.
That's the last slide. Okay. Okay, so thank you again, and happy to field questions and comments.
Super. Thank you very much again, Mr. Benhoff, and again, nice presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, as we did before, we're going to open this portion of the meeting up to any kind of public comment. So Marta, Brett, are anybody from the community signed up to speak?
I don't have anyone on my end. Brett, do we have anyone?
I don't have anyone sign up in the chat.
Okay. So at this point, since there are no public speakers from the public comment period is officially closed. So as we have done before, we're going to go around the panel. I'm going to start with Mr. Anderson again as the first commenter, and then we'll go in reverse order from the last time. So Mr. Anderson, you're up.
Okay. I don't have any direct comments from the neighborhood. I don't know, Mr. Benhoff, did you guys do a meeting with the neighbors and the association, or at least try to?
Yes, I worked with James Kahn, I believe it was, and Peggy Squitieri, and I multiple times asked if they needed me. I wanted to do a presentation, but I think they just reached out to people on their own and got comments, and he called me with a few that I tried to answer to the best of my ability, but no, they never, despite my trying, they never really set up a meeting with me. So.
Right. Well, usually it's because there's sort of not as much interest. That's what results in not having a meeting. So that's good. And nothing bubbled up to my level. In terms of this site, I don't have a lot of the same concerns because of the spacing of the homes here, the distance, as you point out, between other homes, the much more varied nature of the homes around it. There's not a lot of, continuity to the homes here to begin with. My question really a little bit about the drainage here, just for my own purposes. The drywall system, is it designed, strictly speaking, to manage the stormwater created by the structure, or is it also going to be sized for some of that drainage? You seem to be in a little bit of a collection area at the bottom of kind of two little hills. Are you dealing with both water coming onto the site and water from the site, or just from the construction of the house?
That's a good question. My understanding is that they are meant to handle the water that the house displaces. I actually called my engineer before this meeting so I could speak about this intelligently, or somewhat intelligently. And he said all the back of the house, all the drainage off the back of the house will be piped to basically those dry wells.
Right.
But he said that's most of the back of the house. I guess the front of the house still sheets off down to the street. So
yeah,
that's my understanding of it. And it has been fully engineered. The guys have run all those numbers, and I guess we're in pretty good shape. I mean, it's a fairly flat lot. There's not a whole lot of grade any which way.
Right.
I mean, slightly sloping down to the street, but
right. Yeah, no, that's good to know. I would just encourage you that there is a little bit, if you look at a wider, I was on my neighborhood, if you look at the wider contours, there is a little bit of a valley, if you will, where you are between the right and the left of you. Not necessarily behind you, because it actually falls away after you get over the crest of the hill back there. So just think about if it's sized just for the displaced water from the house, or if you might be having to deal with some of what comes from the right and the left.
Okay.
So think about that. The only other comment I'm going to make is you have the next two lots over, right? You're going to be building there as well. Now, this house looks like a very similar house to the one on LaBelle that you built several years ago, only bigger and a little larger. I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm just going to encourage you, as you look at the next two lots, it's okay here to be pretty varied and eclectic in your styles, right? So I may sound like I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but there aren't a lot of homes around here, right? There isn't
Yeah.
something like there was on LaBelle to play from. So,
Right.
I would encourage you to actually, try something different on the other homes to carry that eclectic nature of what's in this area versus what was in LaBelle. But as far as this house goes, those are actually my only comments. I think it's a fine house, and that's it.
Just to address here, so we are working with a custom build client. Radcliffe may be taking it to you guys in April for the house next door.
Right.
It's not a done deal, but assuming that all does move forward, that's a little bit more of a formal style. Still very classic, very traditional, but more of a formal style, maybe more Georgian looking home. So it would satisfy, I think, that kind of little bit of a change of not the same cottagey looking thing 3 in a row.
Right. Right.
So
Which is part of the charm of certain parts of Buxton, right? And
Yep.
I'm kind of contradicting my LaBelle comments, but that's great. And this is spec, right? This is speculative. This is not a custom.
this at this point is speculative at
Okay,
this point.
got it.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Anderson. Let's go to Mr. Kurjakar.
Sorry, I was on mute. I think I'm very familiar with this street. Thanks for a clear presentation again. I do feel that the lighter stone is maybe too light, but I do understand that there's a variety of styles in just this general area. So that's just a statement I'm going to make. I don't take any objections. I do think that if you look around on that street, most of the houses are set back, and there's also a lot of screening and sort of looser plant material that lines both sides of the streets. If you look at the property just next door to you, there's a big loop. However, that entire loop, sort of the belly of that loop is fully landscaped and almost screens the appearance of the house from the street. When I look at the landscape plan, I think I have the same comment as before. I think some taller shrubs, use of more native plantings would be really, really great. And I feel that along the property line, along the street, you may want to consider really beefing up the plant material to provide a very similar planting, maybe palette, and also look that helps you screen the house and be consistent with the neighboring properties.
Okay.
And then I think on the sides where the dry wells are, I feel like you may want to reconsider sort of the placement of them slightly so as to allow a continuous screen on that right side where you're showing the 4 evergreen cedars.
Sadly, that's something I'm not sure I have any control over.
Okay.
The site was sort of engineered, and we're kind of a little bit limited with where what you're not seeing here is sort of where the septic reserve area is and where everything needs to be in relation to one another. And so even though these lots look so big, believe it or not, by the time you get to a building envelope, there's not much room. You're kind of squeezing things where they can go. And I think those dry wells were, again, engineered as part of the subdivision process. So I do hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure if we have much control over that.
Okay.
But again, dry wells are you don't even see them. I mean, so there could be more landscaping in that general area, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I know dry wells, you won't see them.
Right.
But maybe there's a little more continuous screen that sort of continues page north.
I see.
And also on the left-hand side, so page south left, you may want to have some maybe taller shrubs that sort of screen the property. I feel like those few moves might help really make it contextually sort of fit in to the neighborhood.
Okay.
that's all for my comments.
Okay, super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to Mr. Walters.
Thank you. Try going to the rendering, I can see the, yeah. 13. There's just a couple points. There's a couple discrepancies between the rendering on 13 and the elevation, head on elevation on 14. You know, point those out, and then the come back to that. You brought up the shutters, and they're functioning, but all the shutters are the same size, even though the windows are different sizes. But so
That's not entirely true, but go on.
pretty close, right? So two observations between the rendering and the next page is the triple stacked brick over the bay window in the center, and then the next question is to the left inset. Is it the shape or stone? And then Marta, if you could go down to the next page. Oh, no, go back up one. Great. So here we've got what I read is the single, which I think is actually better. The arc brick over the center window, and then I don't believe there's a brick over at least a shake over to the left, right? For the header. No head.
Do you mean the ones, the stone section on the left? You're asking if there's stone headers over those, or brick headers?
Yeah. So when I look at you've got the center section of stone, and then on the left you got another section of stone with two windows in it. The slide in between. This shows shape siding, but it also shows a brick header over the window, which I think is not right. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's the miss. Yes. That should not show a brick header.
That was my gut too. So, and then the brick arch over the center bay window is there at the bottom. It's much more truthful to have the single arch over the window versus the three-step as you go by.
Right.
It feels better proportionally to here than it does in the rendering above.
Okay.
And then if you go to the next, the north elevation, which is the next sheet. Yeah, so here's where I start to notice the shutters where it starts to pop out. So on the first floor, on the right-hand side next to the door, those shutters, comparison to the size of the window versus the double window up on the top, so you have the same size of shutter. So it's the, if they are archable, they should either fold in on themselves or be sized to the window.
So just to address the shutter thing, I'm a bit of a shutter snob. I go around and measure every window and size the shutters to be, accurate. A lot of times if you have the double or wide windows, you don't have a shutter width that would, like you kind of mentioned, that would be the size of half the window, because a lot of times in the back in the day, they would be bifold. Which live in a 100-year-old home, and that's how they were on my home. So generally, when I go put my shutter order in, they're about as historically and functionally accurate as any you'll see, because I do it personally. So your point is well made, and I agree. They should be sized properly. It's a pet peeve of mine when they're not. So agreed.
Thank you. That was your moment.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go to, let's see here. Let's go to Ms. Sauce.
Yes, again, very good presentation, very thorough. I agree with my fellow panelists' comments, especially on the landscaping. I would love to see more natives. The screening, same comment as last time with those evergreens on the right side. My one major concern is the 2 Andromeda in the back, by that back walkway, on the driveway side.
Okay.
Andromeda is a poisonous plant, all parts of it. So if, I don't think it's good to be along a walkway. I don't think it's good to be near the house. I'd like to see that definitely substituted with another plant that wouldn't harm any kids, adults, or animals.
That's good to know. I didn't know that. Okay.
So I'll keep it short. That was about it. That's my one major concern. Thank you.
And just to your point, I had Lloyd put together kind of a good general landscape plan, but I am not married to necessarily certain plants like that. And I trust you when you say that that's the case. That's an easy one for me to agree to. I'm happy to swap that out for something else. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's go to Mr. Sharma.
So I don't have any major concerns besides already been told. It looks good to me.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sala.
FYI, for the record, I've worked with Lloyd.
Oh.
He could be a little bit stubborn sometimes, but anyway, so I didn't really have a lot of comments. I appreciate you pushing the house far away from the street. I think that's a great move. You obviously have a little bit of luxury on the site versus the other house, so thank you for that. I did notice some of the discrepancy of the brick on the facade, as Scott mentioned. But I do want to go back to the first image on the deck, because that was sort of the precedent there, and I saw that they've sort of taken the liberty on the use of the brick a little bit maybe too far. I just would just caution that. It looks comical in my opinion, just on I hope that doesn't get repeated on this house as well. So if you go to the first image of that example, if you go, you see a little bit of a brick border around under the roof eave, and that just looks a little bit funny in my opinion.
Okay.
So I would appreciate it maybe you don't do that here, just kind of keep it clean and simple.
I think we could agree to that. I don't even feel like we had that in this particular plan, so I hear what you're saying. Yep.
Now sometimes brick and stone are sometimes difficult to put together.
Right.
They don't necessarily, each of them wants to be the dominant material, and I've seen that happen successfully on projects where certain elements or certain parts of the massing become brick if you're trying to highlight certain parts of the house. But using brick as an accent material is really difficult, and I think maybe the color use I would definitely recommend maybe you go towards the brown, not the red, in terms of the brick color. I think that would complement the shutters, that would complement the style of the house a lot more than red brick. Even the fireplace, I would just go all brick with the fireplace. I think that would be a nice little accent piece, tying that to the headers above the windows. I think those would complement each other very well. I would love if you could just study that in terms of, because the stone, that's another comment. The stone is very textured, right?
Yeah.
shingles are very textured, and then you do the shingled siding, which is also very textured. And I
Right.
feel like maybe as architecturally, aesthetically, you would want to simplify the siding,
Okay.
have it sort of balance the texture of the stone. I would definitely go with a clapboard siding there in that part of the house. I think if you want to use this model in future for future sites, I think definitely those are things that would help make this house look a lot better. And then I don't like that little lonely dormer on the front. It just looks funny. Like you either put a dormer or don't put the dormer, or maybe balance it on the other side of the house with maybe another set of dormers so that it's balanced. It just looks odd. It looks like a pimple on the side of the house. Sorry for that resentment or that that example. I don't know how else to describe it, but it just looks funny in my opinion to have
Okay.
it there and just not have anything else around it. And I just you could look at the example house in the front, you'll see that a little bit more clearly. But otherwise, it's a beautiful house, and thanks for the presentation. And, that's all the comments I had.
Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you very much. And I think last but not least, let's go to Mr. Can.
Thank you. I want to say I appreciate these presentations. And I think the back and forth dialogue has, which we don't get often, has been really successful. And I appreciate all your cooperation and responses. And the only thing I agree with the comments that have been made. The only thing I would say is, which I've looked at these so many times that we've looked at in terms of the shutters, that I applaud you for your commentary on getting the shutters right.
It's a pet peeve of mine. It drives me nuts when shutters are missized.
Well, we appreciate that. We've seen so many that are so, very unsuccessful in that regard. But I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and I don't have any additional comments. I guess that's the pleasure of going last after 8 or 9 professionals. So, I heard some comments about landscape and native species, and I think some modification of accent brickwork along the front. Again, I'm going to remind the panel that there are 3 options here. You can make a motion to approve the project as submitted, approve the project with conditions to be resolved at the administrative level with the Department of Planning, or additional review with a second meeting being required. So,
Joseph, could I make just one quick comment, if you don't mind?
yes, please.
So I understood the point about that brick that was not the header brick, but the brick that was outlining the gable, basically. I don't have that on this. That's not something we're even asking for. I mean, it was on the one that I'm using as kind of like, this is a similar house, but for this presentation, that's not in the plan, just so you know. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if somebody would like to make a motion here.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve it with condition, and maybe look at the comments on the landscaping that my colleague suggested. And in terms of the exterior of the house, I just would definitely look at simplifying that archway and maybe adjusting the color, the brick. Those are 2 things that I think would be much more successful on the house. I don't know if anybody wants to add any conditions to that.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the Department of Planning, Brett and Marta, is that motion clear enough as Mr. Sala referenced the discussion, or do you need him to be very, very clear in terms of the motion and the conditions?
Joe, do you mind if we can clarify and state like one each condition, and to clarify wherever the project needs to go back for another review, or it could be reviewed administratively by staff?
It could be reviewed administratively by the staff.
But also if you can restate the
Yes, sure.
conditions.
I would
uh,
say there were
thank you.
some comments from the other panelists on the use of native landscaping. I think that's something that would be one condition. And again, sorry, I would ask my colleagues to interject here if there's any additional landscaping comments that were part of it. The second comment would be maybe the use of that three-tiered archway above the window, something that could be simplified, and maybe a single-tier archway would be more appropriate to the style of the house. And then again, study a different colored brick other than red for the exterior finish there. Those are the three comments that I had that I think are important to see addressed.
I would like to add that consider additional screening to fit the neighborhood context on at least actually all sides, but especially the front and the side where the 4 evergreens are. I forget the name of the street. So page right. Thank you.
So Marta and Brett, there's a motion that is suggesting approved with conditions, and the conditions were identified by Mr. Sala, contributed by Mr. Kirchikar. Is that clear enough for the record?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay. A motion is on the table to approve it with conditions identified prior. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Can who
I think
seconded?
2 of us did, but I did as well.
Okay, let's go with Mr. Can being the second. And all in favor, if you could come off of mute and say aye.
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 Aye as well. Any opposed? Hearing none, and the motion carries. Congratulations on the approval with conditions. And thank you for excellent presentations.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, we are through the agenda this evening, so I'd like to ask the panel to make one final motion, which is the motion to adjourn the design review panel meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cam. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I think that was Mr. Kirchikar provided the second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody. Please get outside and enjoy this beautiful weather. Have a great evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye now.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
See you
Thank you.
later.
Bye.
There you go.